people, Hispanics, whoever else, will be dealt with viciously in America and Europe and in England. That is coming as, that's inevitable. We better be prepared. If we feel voting for Labour is going to give us some kind of respite, joke, because both parties represent the same ideology. Like I said, just different ways of implementing it. But I know when Farage gets into power, things will be prepared so much faster. So much. It's an idea. Like I'm saying, Trump is saying, let's make America great again. That great is not really great. Me and Farage is saying the same thing. Let's make Britain great again. It means make it white again. So,
Breaking Boundaries, the talk show on ECR. Know what you used to be. Know what you have become. And know what you can become in the future.
Disclaimer. Topics addressed in today's program may deal with sensitive issues. For example, struggles with mental health, structural racism, sexual behavior, or politically polarizing themes. Listener discretion is advised. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers, commentators, experts, guests, or host. They do not explicitly or necessarily reflect the channel's policy or founding principles. ECR cannot be held accountable for all or any views expressed. Breaking Boundaries Talk Show with your host, Hugh Mayers. Sometimes controversial, often provocative, but always informative. You can call in to ask a question or share your opinion on 0782 611 5543.
Good afternoon, or should I say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is Breaking Boundaries with myself, Hugh Mayers. This is 2026 football, international football season, the World Cup, the biggest football competition on the planet. And it's interesting to watch the game from the UK. I'm not really a football fan. I used to be. Those of you who know me from primary school know I was an absolute fanatic when it comes to the national game. But later teens, I fell out of love with football, and I watch it from time to time, but it's not a passion of mine in the slightest. Not the way that I watch boxing. But it's hard to ignore such a big international competition and, sports, as we talk about current affairs and popular culture and breaking boundaries, and we talk about behavior psychology and relationship dynamics, somewhere in that template or framework, I would say that the football is extremely relevant. And I can't but help notice how many men of color, actually, let me not use that ambiguous term. Let me use a more direct and straightforward term. There's so many black and mixed race young men in the team. And this issue of black English identity keeps coming up. I had a conversation with a good friend of mine. Shout out to Malik, inspirational friend of mine, who's talking about seeing the amount of black players playing for the UK and the conflict in which it causes. I want them to win. But there's a spirit of these insufferable right-wing gits that would be celebrating. And then there's a other conflicted side of, if one of them poor Black Britons miss a penalty for all his outstanding play, the media, the racists, the detractors will home in and cash that check. So it leaves us with a feeling of conflict. But I just want to play something to you from one of our national heroes. I know I don't mean Marcus Garvey. I'm talking about English national heroes. Yeah, I said it. English national heroes.
And I'm worried for Jude simply because he's somebody that they can't control. You can't control him. Obviously, coming off of the who else and what he done in the World Cup, he's showing people that, you know, I'm here, I'm black, I'm proud, I'm ready to go. All that vibe is something that a certain man can't deal with.
I agree with you. A personal experience, and I've spoken about this in 2016, that Raheem Sterling came to see me in the tournament and said that he felt as though he was being persecuted, that it was unfair, and it was basically not relating to football. And I remember at the time me giving him a completely and utterly inadequate answer, and I've spoken about this publicly since, where I said, look, Raheem, it's because of your quality and who you are and what you are that they're criticising you. I remember they did this with Wayne Rooney, I actually name-checked him. They did this with David Beckham, they did this with Paul Gascoigne, the best players, the biggest names. But actually what I didn't read at the time, and to be fair, what he was actually crying out and asking me for help for, was around the fact that this wasn't relating to his football performances, which it was with maybe yourself or with Gaza or with Bex. It was more around the colour of his skin and this persecution around how if he had a car that was this and another player had a car that was this that was white, there was a difference in reporting of it. Do you think that is happening again in front of our eyes here?
You know something, I remember saying, I had to do something for GQ not long ago, and I said, I don't think as Englishmen, there's certain Englishmen, I'm an Englishman, I can't hide from that. Even though when I was younger, people would say, yeah, but you're not really English, right? Yeah, I'm English. I don't think they're ready for a black superstar like that who can move like Jude's moving. You know, they can't touch him, like I just said. He goes out there, he performs, he does what he does. He says, who else? It's too uppity for these people. Something that they used to say back in the day. If you're a black guy or a black man who's, I put it in a football term. So everybody, they love N'Golo Kante. He's a humble black man, gets on with what he's doing. I'm not saying that he's an Uncle Tom or anything, just saying that's how his personality is. But if you get a Pogba or a Bellingham and you get that kind of energy, that does not sit well with the people, that kind of person. So someone like Jude, for some reason, frightens these people because of his capability and the inspiration he can give. It's something that you're taught when you're, as a black man, when you're going out there, you just want to try and do the best you can and keep your head down and be, for want of a better, humble slave. This is where this is dragging up from that kind of energy. Because if you are outspoken, black dip, and doing that kind of, playing to that kind of level and not caring, that frightens certain people. And that's what's going to happen with you. This guy who I'm telling you about in respects of he's obsessed with him. He's moving off of that energy. He can't look and see a black man doing what Jude's doing and think that that's not uppity. He's not uppity. That's where I'm going with that. That's where that comes down to. And I'm worried for Jude.
And that bit that disappeared, you know, the uppity, and then it blanked out, it was the N-word. Yeah, it was the N-word. I've seen the unedited cut, I believe. Yeah, so Ian, our national hero, South London youth, in colloquial language, right? Makes a point. He says, yeah, I'm English. As an Englishman, I'm English. I've heard it said, when many people, it's happened to me, when they return to their country or countries of origin in the Caribbean, your own family will call you Englishman. They don't mean that you're white. They know you're not white. They know you're fam. But they're saying, ethnically you're Jamaican, ethnically you're Antiguan, ethnically you're Guyanese. We know that, come on, the bloodline. But nationality, which is different from bloodline, right? You're English. You grew up eating fish and chips. If you went to school, a place like where I went to school, if you didn't get picked for the football team, you were near tears. If you was one of the man them, for want of a better term, you one of the lads, one of the geezers. Even at 10 years old, you know, amongst boys, there are geezers, right? There's athletes. There's rivalry, right? Boys fight or they push or they shove or whatever the case may be. They prove themselves to their peers. And they want to be in with their peers. You don't get picked for that team, it's eye water. And I'm talking about not winters now with global warming. I'm talking about them winters back in the 70s, where when you're walking from your house to meet up outside the school gate and there's a puddle, it's actually not water, it's ice. And when you go to Brockwell Park to play football, once you put on your kit, before you go on the pitch, there's a tub of Vaseline that's passed around, and everybody puts Vaseline on their legs, because we're not playing like we're scared. It's frost on the ground, but we're going to slide tackle on the ice like nobody's business, because we're here for a victory. Everybody wants their chips at the end of the match. That was promised by the headmaster, the football coach. So Ian makes that point about, or that he's an Englishman, but it raises another question. Well, if he isn't, you could be cool with that, but should he not be picked for England? How would that stand? There's some black people that say, well, I'm not English even though I was born in England. So what if the authority said, nah, England, Ian, you can't play for England, you ain't English. Is that okay? Food for thought, right? But Ian goes on to talk about the dynamics of a black man, regardless of whatever his nationality is now, within the British system, within the British social system, the idea of being uppity, having ideas or confidence above his station. There are people there are white British people that will see some young man that is confident and admire that, and maybe a teacher, a coach, a mentor, whatever, and want to pour into that and encourage that kid. Love that confidence, love that for you. There's some like that. But there's others that will push a button, that he is an uppity, and that needs to be put back in his place, or that confidence in that black male body makes many uncomfortable. So I like the way that Ian raised that, about being too uppity, and the double standards that is often percolated in the background in the mainstream media. Not throughout all the publications, but that's common. At times you see that double standard shift with people like Raheem Sterling in his story, how they was hammering him. He's buying a nice house for his mum or for him and his family, and it's seen as bling, and there's certain words, certain framing that's suggesting he's a bit lemon, isn't he? He's a bit flash. He's a flash, you know what I mean? But when another white British player, his peer, does the same thing, it's like a gesture of warmth towards his parents, or, you know, taking care of family. He's framed different because there's this double standard. So they're saying, don't be outspoken, just be a humble slave. And I like the point that Ian made when he said the example of Kante, where he said he's just a humble black man, because it's true that there are some people, because we've got all different personality types within different races and different nationalities. There are some black people, right? There's non-confrontational generally, or mellow people, laid-back people. They're not really in-your-face type, or they're easygoing. But it doesn't equal necessarily Uncle Tom. They're just chill. They just got that kind of personality, right? Sometimes when people they fly through any or less pushback. But at the same time, we are allowed to be who God made us, and we're not supposed to. That's a strong word. Not supposed to have to make ourselves smaller, take the bass out of our voice, or make our frames even sit. You know, the type of people they talk about in the corporate world, black men who say, like, I would get to the meeting first, so I was already sitting down and that, because when I come in the room, the way that people would react. You have to navigate like that. You shouldn't have to navigate like that. We should be who God made us, right? And others have to deal with it. But Ian, he pushes the boat out and he makes those points. So it had me thinking, should we be playing for the national team? Right? And when I say we, let me qualify that. Let me give a context. Should a black person, I don't care whether their parents is from Africa, the Caribbean, wherever, Central or South America, Central, North or South America, wherever we find black people originating from, right? Indigenous too, right? Should we be playing for British teams, England, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland or Wales? Should we? Should we really do that? How do you feel about that? Even if you're not a football fan, even if you're not a sporting fan. Remember when Linford Christie, who wasn't born in England, Linford Christie is born in Jamaica, but he ran for England. No problem. No harm, no foul. He's come to England, he's living in England, and he is training in England, run for England, like no big deal. But then when he wins the Olympic or the European gold medal, he is draped in, he takes a Union Jack and drapes himself in a Union Jack, and there is so much controversy, like he's a sellout. But it's a question. He's already running for the country. He's already got it on his vest. Is it a political statement? It's a statement. If you're from the hood, it means something else. Everything is about context, right? And Linford got a bit of a hard time for that one. I remember seeing Nigel Benn walk to the ring, Dark Destroyer. Enough respect to Nigel Benn. But we don't see with the Union Jack thing after the fight, or the Union Jack waving before the fight. There was something inside of me. And I'm born in this country. And there was still something inside of me that it used to churn my stomach. And maybe I'm not a soothsayer or somebody that could see the future, but I definitely knew the time I was living in and was aware of the past. And it was possibly that conditioning I had with the NF and the BMP and their projection of the Union Jack. You didn't really see the St. George's flag them times too much around the place. But it was that projection of the Union Jack. And do you really belong? Are you really, as a person of color or black, are you really English? Are you really British? Is this your country? And then there is that argument. I've heard the cultural nationalists, the Pan-Africanists, the black nationalists, the Afrocentrics speak about identity into many of those spaces. People, doing the work, right? Raising the consciousness in the community, representing social issues. When there was a death in custody or some type of injustice on a community level, people would come out in numbers. This is before the days of social media, where we just had to post and get likes. Like, people made it to those events. And I heard it said on more than one occasion when people would say, I'm African, I'm actually not part of, this isn't a country. And then another black person responds by saying, well, if this ain't your country, then F off, innit? What legislation, law or policy do you want to change in the next man's country? If this ain't your country, and the man who said that said, this is my country. I'm English, yeah. I lived in Devon. I lived in all different parts of the country. Yeah, this is my country. So I got a stake. I got a right to say. I listened to something recently, and I heard a white nationalist, white ethno-nationalist, English, England, white people, that type, mass deportation type, Olokemi, you're not welcome, that type. Doesn't matter how good you speak, standard English, King's English, there is no the good brown person or the good black person in those guys' framework. They want non-whites to leave. I heard one of those people speaking recently, doing some research, and he said, this isn't what our grandfathers fought for. And I thought, my grandfather fought in the war. And if I'm not mistaken, in Brixton, there's a cenotaph. I hope I'm pronouncing the word right, but a memorial toward the the West Indian regiments that played a part in the war. My granddad was a soldier, so I don't think he fought for a Britain that I wouldn't feel welcome in. And that I don't have a moral right to be in, and my paperwork is straight. Not asking. I go on my terms. If and when I want to go. Was Elephant Man got that tune, that boy now make me run left the area. You know what I mean? You can't run me out of town. You're mad. As my students would say, are you dizzy, cuz? Are you stupid, bruv? Like, we're not going nowhere. Or in correct English, we aren't going anywhere. But the statement still stands. We ain't leaving. Unless or until we are ready. Runoko Rashidi, Dr. Runoko Rashidi, famous historian, right? Wrote a book, African Presence in Early Europe. Actually, Runoko Rashidi is, where was he from? Which part of, I don't recall which part of the United States he was from, but he was somebody that a international an internationally recognized historian, and he had an approach. He had on his website the concept of and documentation, which he referred to as the global African presence, because he would trace out, the dark skin, woolly haired black people of different continents, of Asia and the Middle East, different parts of the Americas, Central South, or even North America, African presence, early presence of, black noblemen in medieval or even ancient Britain, British Isles. Like, I remember bumping into him one time. I was in Guyana in 2014. I'd seen him speak live in Nettleford Hall in Norwood, maybe a few years before that, or some years before that. And I was part of a convoy that had given him a lift back to his hotel, reasoning and stuff like that with a good doctor. But it was some years had passed. So when I bumped into him in a random street in the market in downtown Georgetown in Guyana back in 2014, I was just shocked to see him there, and I just walked up to him and said, "Yo, Dr. Rashidi, do you remember me?" The amount of, when I think of the naivety of it, the amount of hundreds of Africans he must meet around the world who he does talks with, takes pictures with, does lectures, answers questions, whatever the case may be. But for some reason, I remembered him, but he didn't remember me. But I don't know if he was in the military or not, but I saw him like a military training kicking in, because obviously he's away from home in another country. A man comes up to him, and I got a totally different accent to everybody in the country. So I could see that his antennas went up, and he started to ask me some casual questions in the conversation. "I've just come from London. I might be heading there too. What's the pound? What's the price? What's the pound? The currency exchange at the moment?" And he asked me a few questions, and we chopped it up. And he seemed to relax when I assume, gained the authenticity that I wasn't no CIA operative or meant no ill will, and I generally was from London. And he seemed to relax, and we had a good conversation. And then I kept it moving and wished him peace. But yeah, Dr. Runoko Rashidi, African presence in early Europe, he talks about Roman Britain and the military presence back then, right? An African legion stationed near Hadrian's Wall, right? He talks about Septimus Severus, the African emperor, right? That was in the UK hundreds of years ago. Don't know if it was 2nd century, 3rd century AD. We, black people, have been coming to this place for centuries, not like 1 or 2 centuries, but maybe I should say thousands of years. The people from Carthage coming here to mine copper in Wales. There's too much documentation of our presence, right, in the UK, right? They even talk about, history even teaches us about the Silures, right? The ancient ethnic group in Britain described as having dark complexion and curly hair, right? But does that still answer the question? Should we be playing for the national team? Or are we just visitors? We're not really welcome here, or they're doing us some type of favor? There weren't people here that came, generations of people that came here and made major contributions to the nation's uplift after World War II. We're just like scrounging, we're just begging a favor, they just said, come here and be nice, because we was hungry with white squalor and foam around our mouth, like we were dehydrated and begging something, or we were part of a contingent that thought we were going to the quote-unquote mother country as being part of that empire at the time, and so not even needing to renew citizenship or needing anything other than our passport as part of the Commonwealth, right? But should we be playing for the national team? White supremacy's reading of history tends to bypass medieval Moors. If you notice that, there's medieval Moors and other black noblemen in positions of power, right? Within the UK, within the British Isles. Kenneth the Niger ruling 7 provinces of Scotland, right? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years ago. But school curriculum and white supremacist teachings or reading or narrative of history tends to bypass that. We know one thing, right? Black people, from that perspective, tend to be framed, right, in histories around, framed in histories of servitude, right? Came here to pour the coffee, right? Or as colonial subjects, as you know, like as people under colonial rule. So the question stands: should we be playing in the national team? That's the question I got for you today. We got some more interesting things, bits and pieces to chop up. We're gonna get there. But I have a phrase. I have a phrase for you, and the phrase is: the gift is know what you used to be, know what you have become, and know what you can become tomorrow, in the future.